Okay, welcome back, everybody. It's the top of the hour, and it's my great pleasure to introduce this next session on treatment services for the incarcerated population. It's my honor and pleasure to introduce Attorney Lorne Sabsay, who's a criminal defense attorney and civil litigation lawyer with more than 30 years of experience. He's a certified specialist in criminal law by the Law Society of Ontario and teaches advocacy and legal skills through organizations including the Advocate Society, the Criminal Lawyers Association, the Ontario Bar Association. Attorney Sabsay serves as the executive director of the Canadian Association of Drug Treatment Court Professionals. I would note that Attorney Sabsay is also an accomplished practitioner of the martial arts. I understand has also done some television appearances. Good morning, Attorney Sabsay.
Good morning. Thanks very much for that kind introduction. One of the things that has always traditionally been very difficult in terms of practicing criminal law and having clients who are facing and dealing with various mental health concerns is the inability to have those concerns recognized and dealt with when that client is incarcerated. It's been an ongoing problem and difficulty, as Dennis indicated, in my practice for over 30 years. You know, you have someone come in, someone who might be fluidly psychotic, someone who may be suffering from various kinds of ailments, illnesses, or addictions, and who are in serious need of help that is relevant not just to their welfare, but can be to the case and to what it is that they are facing in the criminal justice system. And it is with great pleasure that I introduce you to two people who are going to talk to you about sorry, I just got to get the name correctly here. The Forensic Early Intervention Service at the Toronto South Detention Center. And this is really, you know, the more I learned about this, the more remarkable it seemed to me that this has been a project that has been necessary for many, many years. And it's an absolutely fantastic thing that it's happening. And so I'm going to introduce the two people who are going to be spearheading this presentation. And their names, I assume, well, actually, they're both on the same screen. Okay, so you'll see a screen that says Tanya Connors on it, but that's not actually Tanya who's seated in front of that. That is Sharie Thompson-Rudder, and she is the acting manager of social work services at the Toronto South Detention Center. She's a social worker in the Ministry of the Solicitor General and has been since 2017. She's got over 9 years experience, social work experience, dealing with mental health and rehabilitation and reintegration of clients in the criminal justice system. And she has acted on those interests both here in Canada and in Barbados. Also, who's going to be with us and presenting is Tanya Connors. She's a social worker with 20 years of clinical social work experience. She's worked in a variety of settings, including ACT, A-C-T. She's going to have to tell you what that stands for. I don't know. Mobile crisis teams, women's shelters, and the Toronto Drug Treatment Court. She's been with CAMH, the Center of Addiction and Mental Health, for 14 years. And she is the current manager of the aforementioned Forensic Early Intervention Service, or FEIS. So I'm now going to turn it over to Sharie and Tanya.
Good morning. So like Mr. Sabsay mentioned, my name is Sharie. I am the acting manager of social work services here at Toronto South Detention Center. And I will start off our presentation and then I'll transition into Tanya, who is our manager of the FEIS team, the Forensic Early Intervention team. Okay, so our initial slide just speaks about Toronto South Detention Center and the transition for the ministry's idea of modernization. So we have the Southwest Detention Center and Toronto South Detention Center, which are amalgamations of other detention centers into who we are here today. So Toronto South we housed clients from the Mimico Correctional Center, Toronto Jail, and Toronto West Detention Center. Toronto South Detention Center has been housing clients from 2014, and we try to address their needs, and that's what I'll be speaking on. So I'm going to walk you through essentially the admission process here at TSDC, the services that we offer to our clients here to assist them in their rehabilitation. So that can be providing services to address their mental health, their substance use, helping them to manage their symptoms due to trauma, and how we help them reintegrate into the community. So there's a little bit about our inmate population. We are a detention center. We are not a prison. So our clients here essentially are awaiting their court dispositions. They are charged, but they're not always convicted. We house clients from the GTA and they attend court within the GTA. Due to the pandemic, a lot of our clients do their court cases here in their detention center online, and we still support them with the resources that they may need. So like Lorne mentioned, we have clients who enter the facility who have many different concerns. As clinicians here, we try to address those concerns, keep up to date with their court matters, and also with consent from the client, speak to their family members and to their legal counsel to address any concerns the court may be looking for. TSDC, our population here, we are a diverse population, which is representative of the Toronto population. And also, our clients here are able to benefit from our diverse staff. So if I use mental health as an example, this is a frequent concern that we have here at the South. Some clients, depending on their country or region of origin, depending on their religion or their culture, may not have great insights into their mental health concern, or they may simply deny their mental health concern. With our diverse staff who may share similarities from the region or country of origin, cultural or religious background, we're able to speak to that client. Through offering psychoeducation, we're able to highlight or give insight into the client's mental health concern. We're able to discuss with them symptoms that they may be experiencing. We're also able to discuss with them the treatment options that they have here, in addition to treatment options that they have within the ministry. And I'll speak about that later as it relates to correctional centers, which are treatment focused. But having a diverse population of clients and having a diverse population of staff members allows us to speak to the clients where they're at, addressing the stigma or the societal taboo that they may have from their countries of origin or because of their religion. Many clients here, and I can speak from being someone from Barbados, mental health is not something that's spoken about openly, and therefore when we have Afro-Caribbean or Afro-Canadian clients here, some people are able to just speak about the stigma that's at home. We're able to touch on the religious background that we are taught, but still also highlight what a mental health illness is and how we can help. The same thing goes for a diverse team here in terms of matching or speaking to clients in their language of origin, which may seem to be small things for somebody, but for our clients, it makes a significant difference to be able to see somebody who looks like you, who's in a profession, who's able to help you. So right now, I'll walk you through our admitting and discharge process and what that looks like here for our clients. In this process, we are also able to seek those clients out who have concerns. So when a client enters Toronto South Detention Center, they're all seen by healthcare. There's a comprehensive healthcare assessment that's facilitated on their entry. This looks for things like their medication reconciliation. So we try to get as great of a picture as possible of the medication that they're taking when they're outside in the community. We also try to address physical health concerns. If a client discloses that they have mental health concerns or they've had a mental health history, they will be seen by a mental health registered nurse as well, and a screening tool is given to them. In disclosing this information to our staff on entry, they're able to be classified to specific units. So in this presentation, we're looking to help our client to have mental health concerns or substance use concerns. Our registered nurses on entry into the facility are able to classify our clients to specific units addressing the concerns that were brought forth in that assessment. So we have clients who may be sent to our special needs unit. We have clients who may be sent to a unit for stabilization. We have clients, if someone is experiencing significant withdrawal, we're not going to send them to a regular unit. We will have them go to the infirmary where they will be seen and addressed for those concerns. So that's just a little bit about how we process clients coming in here and how we're able to classify them to units to meet their needs. So Toronto South is different to many other institutions. We are a direct supervision institution. We run on a direct supervision model, which is very different from many of our other facilities. So in a direct supervision model, and I'll show you a picture following, there's great interaction between our staff and our clients. Our correctional officers actually work on the unit with the clients instead of being in a separate office or a separate room. This is a progressive model, and it has a greater impact for rehabilitation of our clients. And the layout is very different, so I'll show you a picture of that. So here is an example of what a housing unit in TSDC looks like. So we have our soft seating. Straight ahead, you're going to see a desk. That's where the officers sit. Behind there, we have an interview room. And this interview room is a room where social workers, chaplains, our doctors, psychiatrists, professionals are able to see clients in that room on the unit and provide confidential care to them. And a client doesn't have that sense of uneasiness having to move through the facility as they would somewhere else. It's very important for us in the DS model as well to have a sense of normalcy. So we have our soft seating. We have 2 flat screen televisions on the unit, and we have a yard. The basketball court is used not just for basketball, there is exercise equipment, and there's also smudging for those who would like to do so. Our Indigenous clients are those who are invited to do so. The flat screen TVs on our units help us, or can help us a lot with our rehabilitation. Having these screens on the unit allows for people, it allows for us to disseminate information. So the screens in a DS model can be used for rehabilitation if it's programming to address managing mental health, substance misuse, programming on anger management. Earlier this year, though we have been affected by COVID like everyone else, we have had programs where people address budgeting, building their resume, and we're able to use the technology here at Toronto South with the DS model to help our clients. It provides a safe space, and though they're incarcerated, it gives them that opportunity to understand healthy relationships. And that's what the model is based off of. We as staff here are correctional officers who are there 24/7, model positive behavior. And essentially that's what it's about. And clients have that opportunity to emulate that behavior. They have free access to their correctional officers and also to us as clinicians. So we go, we have conversations, and change doesn't happen overnight. So having this model allowing us to go onto the unit just below the TVs, which is out of sight, we have a program room where we go into the room with our televisions, with DVDs, and we actually facilitate and deliver programs to all clients who are interested. So our model is very progressive. It's there's a lot of interaction with our clients, and that's what we need. We're trying not to build a space where people who are in detention have that fear. Being incarcerated brings with it great fear. It may trigger some people, those who are affected by mental health. There's that likelihood that they may be a bit more uneasy. But this direct supervision model and what we try to do here at TSDC is to help people to adjust, essentially. So I'll speak about our multidisciplinary team, and we have quite a large team. We try not to work in silos here at TSDC. For the benefit of our clients, it's important that we all play our part, and we address our areas of expertise, but we are also very collaborative. So our team, as you can see on the screen, we have our addiction counselors, our SEALs, chaplains, institutional liaison officers, and they are probation officers who work here with us. So we have 2 ILOs, and they work here with our clients and with our multidisciplinary team, and also connect us to probation officers in the community. We have the Legal Aid of Ontario, who we communicate a lot with them. Our Native Inmate Liaison Officer. It's very important for us here that we address the needs of our entire population as best we can. We have a high number of Indigenous clients here in our facility, and our NILO is there to support them with bridging the gap between custody and the community, highlighting areas of need to our elder who supports our clients so that we can help clients while they're housed here in custody. It may look like smudging, circle hearings on the unit, but also helping them to transition into the community, going to Sagate, going to NAMI-RES, and just bridging that gap between and addressing their needs while also keeping their traditions close to heart. And that's very important. Additionally, to our team, we have our general duty nurses, our mental health nurses, physicians, program officers. So program officers are unique to some of our institutions, and they are correctional officers, but they've been trained specifically to deliver several programs, which I'll show you later. These officers go onto the units, they seek the interest of the clients. We also get information from assessments that we do that highlight the risk and need areas of clients, and we try to address those. Additionally, we have our psychiatrists or psychologists, our recreational officers who play an integral role here at Toronto Cell in terms of having that meaningful time out of cell, that meaningful interaction. And it's important that our clients have that rapport with our staff. We don't want people to be at Toronto South and sitting in their cell. We're not interacting with others. So we have specific staff who are there who will meet with them, discuss their areas of interest. A lot of our staff are very well trained, so motivating them to change their behaviors. We also have our rehabilitation officers, social workers, and our volunteer services coordinator. So as we try to address strategies that are to support clients who are affected by trauma, mental health, and substance use, I'm just going to highlight a few of our team members and the role that they play in addressing concerns while in custody, in addition to while they're transitioning out of custody. So first off, I'm going to start with our social work team. I also want to highlight, however, that it's very important to note that clients are given dignity and have the autonomy to make their own decisions. So while many people may believe that this specific client needs help or their family members call and express concern, we do speak to our client to find out where they are in terms of their stages of change. What do they want to address? Some clients may have a substance use concern, but they don't feel it's the time right now to address that concern. It's very important to understand in terms of clients for substance use, do they want to abstain from their substances, or are they leaning more towards a harm reduction route? But I just want to highlight that all of our services are based on the client's consent, and they have every right to consent to doing so or not. So our social work team here, we focus primarily on case management, discharge planning, and liaison with collaterals in the community. So that may look like tenant boards, that may look like friends and family, and also counsel if people give consent to do so. We're also responsible as a social work team for facilitating programs and completing clinical assessments for parole eligibility. We also facilitate levels of service inventory, which is an assessment that we use to find out a client's risk or need areas. This is very important for us because we do an in-depth psychoeducational assessment, and that highlights a client's criminal history, but it also highlights their mental health history, physical health history. Have they themselves been a victim of a traumatic event? And the information that's output highlights their risk areas of recidivism, but also their need areas. And we as social workers try our best to address those areas if the client is willing to do so. So social workers here, they provide referral forms. Like I mentioned about our correctional treatment centers, we have the St. Lawrence Valley Correctional Center. Clients who have mental health concerns or suspected mental health concerns, those who are experiencing severe psychosis, we try our best to have these clients assessed, and they go there. It's a 16-week intensive program. Sorry, that one isn't 16 weeks. You can have a minimum of 3 months before you go there, but you can stay there for 6 to 9 months. The OCI, which is our Ontario Correctional Institute, they address concerns such as those of our clients who have sexual offending histories, those who have substance use concerns, or an antisocial pattern. You have to have a minimum of 9 months to attend this center. And then we also have the Algoma Center, who addresses substance use, but mainly anger management and domestic violence. So essentially, we're trying to help clients not only address their mental health and substance use, but also their criminogenic factors, addressing their criminal behavior and helping them to understand a different path that they have an option of taking and reducing the risk of recidivism. We also have our addiction counselor who assists with referrals into the community, and also our volunteer services coordinator. So we have all of these programs that are offered. We try to address the person as a whole. Yes, some people have been convicted of a crime, and most of our clients here are detained for a charge, but we try to address them as a whole. So addressing their substance use, having them understand the importance of goal setting and changing their habits. Our volunteer services coordinator, these are just a few that are unique to Toronto South. So art therapy, resilient reintegration, which looks at the discharge planning of a client 4 weeks in. And we also try to address overdose prevention here as well. So when it comes to our discharge planning, we try to address a lot of things that we try to address are like determinants of health. And housing is such an integral part of discharge planning. And it's something that we in the city, we have a concern regarding clients leaving custody and may not have somewhere to go. We're depending so heavily on our shelter system, but there's not always a bed available. However, through discharge planning, our social workers do try to ensure that a client has housing upon release. So when our social workers meet with their clients, the first conversation should be about discharge planning. We try to find out all the areas the client wishes to address. And while they're housed here, we make those referrals. We network with our community partners to get them housing or to get them into treatment for their substance use or their mental health. While clients can't apply for financial aid in custody, we do help them to set up appointments upon release from custody. So if we know their discharge date or counsel calls and says this person is going to be bailed, we do our best to set up those appointments so clients can address their financial needs. Some clients are interested in completing school. While this is offered here at Toronto South, some clients don't feel comfortable doing so in custody. And so we work with our district school boards to have clients transition into classes. Applications for work, we try to help with, and like I mentioned, our treatment applications. COTA, CMHA, and Inner City Health are just a few of the referrals that we make for our clients. We do make use of many community agencies in our community to address client needs. And I'd also want to speak on how our mental health team plays a part in discharge planning, specifically for our mental health clients. So they address the methadone or Suboxone use into the community. They connect with their pharmacies in the community to help clients transition. If clients are taking specific medication here, our mental health team does their best to have clients have a 3 to 5 day bridging prescription to allow them time to get to their doctor's appointment upon release from custody. And then our final point will be just to address if a client is sentenced and their date for departure approaches, but they're acutely unwell, our doctors and psychiatrists see our clients, they form our clients, and we transition them to the hospital just to ensure that they are safe and our community is safe. I know this is a lot of information, but I hope that it's given you a greater idea of some of the strategies that we use here, some of the applications that we use just to address our client needs. I'm going to transition you to Tanya.
Thank you, guys. Working in a little bit of a cramped space. So you can see from my colleague Sharie that the Toronto South is a lot more than what you might hear about in the news. And it's a large institution with a lot of hardworking people trying to accomplish a lot of goals and a lot of planning. I'm going to switch over now to tell you a little bit about one of the specialty services, and that is the Forensic Early Intervention Service, or FICE, which is a very unique program in that it is only offered in 2 correctional institutions right now in Ontario, and that is the Toronto South and the Vanier Centre for Women. And it's a unique program, and what you see on the screen here is actually a picture of the mental health unit, and those stairs are now removed. And if you look up at the top in the mezzanine, that's actually where we're sitting today. Our offices are above the mental health unit. So this CAMH service is truly embedded in the correctional setting, and we work closely in a partnership with Sharie and her team, as well as all the healthcare nurses and psychology to sort of bring services. So let's just give you an overview a little bit more about the program. First of all, as I mentioned, we're just one of many programs at CAMH, and I guess those of you in the GTA have probably heard about CAMH, but if you're not familiar with it, the Centre of Addiction and Mental Health is one of the largest institutions in Canada for mental health services. It's quite large. It has many programs, and the forensic stream is just one, and FICE is just one of many other programs. So it's just one little program embedded with many of the CAMH programs. We have geriatric, schizophrenia, addiction services, many more programs. So we're a collaboration, and again, I mentioned it's unique. We're actually a collaboration with the Ministry of Health and what used to be called Community Safety and Correctional Services, now known as SLOGEN, which in itself is a unique idea. So mental health funding has been paired with corrections to deliver services within the facility. So we're an outside vendor, guests in the home, so to speak, of these institutions. We opened in 2015 at the Toronto South, and 17 at Vanier. And so as we know, and research has shown, and if COVID has taught us anything, we also see that mental health, people with mental health issues are overrepresented in the prison population. So CAMH has a famous kind of campaign that they did quite a while back now, 1 in 5 experience mental health issues. Well, actually, based on our research here at the South, I would say 1 in 3 coming through our doors require mental health support. And at Vanier, I would say the numbers are even higher with our women, maybe 1 in 2 would screen positive for mental health services. Saying that, and as Sharie showed earlier, when clients are admitted into an institution, into A&D here at Toronto South, they're given a brief jail mental health screener, and I'll show you that tool later, but it's a tool that it's very general, and it looks at, have you ever had a mental health admission before? Do you take medications for mental illness? Do you feel followed, or someone could read your thoughts? It's very vague. It's only 9 questions. And if you trigger that screener with 1 or more yeses, then you get a referral to our program here upstairs, the FICE service. And so while we may get, a third of all referrals coming through, the population that we tend to work with and the population that we're funded to see is actually that 2%, that acutely unwell, really unwell population. So we will see all who are referred to us, and then we triage the referrals to see who would actually be suitable for FICE. The rest of the population would be referred back to general psychiatry in the Toronto South Jail. And we work in partnership with this team, we're consultation, but the people we case manage are that 2%. We're a multidisciplinary team, social workers, nurses, occupational therapists. We have daily coverage with psychiatrists as well. We have a great team. And we're a collaboration, right? So the FICE team does not provide the treatment or care to the client. We are a consultation service. While we do consult and support discharge plans, while we do liaise with families and outside caregivers and make referrals, it has to be, first of all, consent-based. The client has to agree to our services. And we are doing that in partnership with the Toronto South team as well. So we can't provide involuntary treatment. The jail is not a Schedule I facility. So some of the things that people sometimes have a misunderstanding about is, well, FICE is there, you can give them their injection, or FICE is on site, you can make sure this person is formed and sent out. That's not how it works. The Form 1s are still written by the Toronto South Psychiatry team and their healthcare team. And treatment is not administered in jail. This is not a Schedule I facility. So the only place treatment can be, sort of involuntarily administered under the court order is in a Schedule I facility such as CAMH. So the people that we tend to work with, that 2%, so to speak, is the people who are maybe going down the NCR pathway and not criminally responsible pathway. So they're going to have a long time in the legal system, and their crime may have been, due to their mental illness. So we would definitely stay involved with those cases. If a client is unfit to stand trial or at risk of being unfit to stand trial, or as we say, more like clinical terms, acutely unwell, we would definitely stay involved. If they're going to be sent for Form 48 or an assessment, we try to work again with those clients to help coordinate their care and work with people that are at risk of entering the forensic mental health system. The other piece to know, of course, is that we only work with people before they're sentenced. So this is an upstream kind of program. If you're sentenced, we're not able to work with you. Once the client becomes sentenced, FICE can't stay involved. So we're that early intervention piece. So this is a little bit about what our program is based on. It's actually under the STAIR pathway. And that's a model of care that was coined by Dr. Sandy Simpson. And we've really started to, this little diagram has really helped provide the framework, not just provincially, but internationally, about services that are required for correctional care. So screening, triage, assessment, intervention, and reintegration. And if you look at that pathway, the screening piece happens in A&D, in the admission discharge bay. and we use the tool, the Brief Jail Screener. And again, the Toronto South Healthcare team uses that tool. The referral gets faxed to us, and the FICE team would do what we call a JSAT. So the triage part is we get a new referral. Every day we get new referrals. We meet in the morning. We look at those referrals, and then we go out across the jail, regardless of what unit they're on. And we do what's called the JSAT, the Jail Screening Assessment Tool, which is a nice biopsychosocial quick assessment. It's not meant to be diagnostic. It's not meant to label people or do a deep dive. It's really meant to sort of do a quick overview of where this person is in terms of their ability to function, what their needs are, what their strengths are, and do they need to be involved with more intensive mental health care. Every day in the afternoon at 3 or so in the afternoon, our team meets with our psychiatrists and we review all the JSATs we've done for the day. And so, for example, if we saw 10 new clients, maybe 4 or 5 of them would warrant further follow-up for our psychiatrists. So we'd further triage them to our psychiatric assessment. The other 5 may have mental health issues, but they're manageable, they're being monitored, they're able to integrate into the population, and we refer them automatically back to the Toronto South. For those that our doctors do assessments for, and we then further decide to keep on the caseload, we look at doing, again, interventions, but the intervention, again, is in partnership with the Toronto South. So we would look at their histories and give the Toronto South access to the most recent medication regime they might have had, or what community supports they may have, what we feel some of the gaps are in their care and what they're needed. And then we would provide what you would call traditional case management services, which is coordinating with their community supports, helping to build a discharge plan, and working towards reintegration. So this is a copy of the Brief Jail Screeners. You can see it's very vague. And when we first rolled this out, the nurses in A&D said, well, everybody would screen positive. We're going to refer everybody to FICE. And to be honest, that's okay. We're quite okay with having more to see than who we keep, because the people that we're really trying to target this program for are those who are quietly psychotic or quietly unwell, who fly under the radar. Everybody knows somebody who's coming through who's manic or yelling or screaming or psychotic or really, mood elevated with substance use or long time, chronic schizophrenia symptoms. People can see that. Those tend to be very visual and presenting, for urgent care. But those guys who are quiet, who may seem to be okay until you talk to them for 5 minutes and then they believe the aliens are following them, or there's a chip in their shoulder, or there's somebody tracking their movements or whispering in their ears. Those are the people that often go unnoticed and sadly deteriorate in jail or linger and have their court matters sort of delayed because of undiagnosed mental health. So those are the ones we're also trying to screen out. So the screener is general, but it's done so by design. This is a copy of our JSAT. And again, for those familiar with psychosocial assessments and biopsychosocial assessments, that's basically what it is. You'll see there's a lot of tick boxes. Not a lot of room for commenting, because we really are just scratching the surface to further indicate if they need our services. Somatic concerns, depression, anxiety, hostility, elevated mood, all very general themes. And again, we would do a deeper dive if we felt that they were, somebody we want to further consider. That's when our psychiatrist would do a deeper dive. So who we see, as you can imagine, and this was an early snapshot, but one of the things that came out quite early in our research was that out of the first round in our first year, we did an analysis of who came to Toronto South, and we realized that 60 to 65% of the clients that we registered for CAMH already had a CAMH MRN healthcare number. So these are people we know. So 65% of the new admissions to Toronto South were already CAMH clients, which of course is sad, but also speaks volumes and is in some ways helpful, because we have that electronic health record and we're able to access that and then provide timely, quick information to the Toronto South that they would otherwise not have access to. So unfortunately, the statistics are true. We saw it in our own program that those mentally ill are overrepresented in prison. And the only hope for that is, like I said, we're able to provide good healthcare information based on their previous admissions. Most of them are homeless, and you can see it says like 36% live in stable housing. I would say it's probably even less than that. So that means 70% are probably, insufficiently housed, if not homeless. 70% or so are usually diagnosed with schizophrenia. That's not a surprise. It is one of those conditions that can be chronic and reoccurring and unfortunately difficult to treat and often leads to conflict with the law. And it also says that 94% have been previously incarcerated, which is also sad, seeing that the cycle is not broken and there's a repeat on the admissions. So some of the successes, not just from having the FICE service, but what kind of grew from our program is we now have, and this is not unique to the Toronto South, we were able to help coordinate beds as well for Vanier women at Ontario Shores. But CAMH has now put together a package where there's one currently operational, but there will be scaled up to 5 acute care stabilization beds. And what that means is clients who are here in the Toronto South who are acutely unwell and requiring hospital care and are on the FICE caseload, we're able to streamline the admission straight to our unit, a secure treatment unit, and essentially bypass the emerge piece. They're on a Form 1, and we've done the assessments, so they meet the admission criteria of a Form 1, but we streamlined the process that they can go directly to a bed as opposed to have to go through a very awkward and often difficult screening process at emerge. That bed is in high demand, as you can see. It's been utilized 92, I think it's actually 95 now this year, % of the time. It's a short-term stay. It's not meant to be a recovery long-term care bed. It's meant to stabilize people, get them started on medication, help them kind of get cleaned up and a little bit more focused to be able to continue working through the forensic system. So it's meant to be a stabilization bed, not something that people can take for longer than 3 weeks. Although we've had a few that have gone a little longer, a little louder. The other thing we're able to do with this unique partnership, which has helped greatly, is that early on in 2018, we applied for a grant, our team, and we were able to fund training for correctional officers, specialized mental health training delivered by psychiatrists on our team and clinicians. And it was a really extremely positive event. Clients and staff were, the staff were very excited that we knew the same clients they did, that we were able to talk about that with some credibility because we worked in the institution. We understood the challenges they face as officers and the limits to the care and operations that they can deliver. And so while it was a really well-received training, over 100 officers were trained, including some at Vanier. What then happened was that CAMH Education and Corrections Ontario partnered, and we now have modules built into the correctional officers training based on that information that we did in 2018. So each new hire coming to the correctional centers has that training that was developed by CAMH. So that was another great partnership. So you can see here, this is just some of our numbers. And things have changed, of course, with COVID, but I would say, if anything, the number of people we were able to complete JSATs on have actually increased during COVID because they're no longer leaving the facility for court. So, but while they're doing video court, they're not leaving the facility. That means they're available throughout the day for our staff to see them. So out of 5,000 new referrals at Toronto South in 2020, 2,100 or so were referred to FICE, and we were able to do a JSAT on just close to 1,800 of those clients. The number of clients that were on our case for longer term is around 500. I would say it's a bit higher than that even, but tracking that data is difficult, but these are clients who had multiple visits with us. So some of the things that are challenges for this program, and those who work with remand populations can appreciate this, is the short stays. Sometimes our guys are admitted on a Friday, discharged on a Monday, we don't get to see them, or in on a Friday, released on Tuesday, back again next Saturday. So there's a quick turnaround sometimes on how we get to see them. We are a consent-based service, so if clients refuse us, we cannot proceed with working with them. We do kind of a 3 or 4 strikes you're out kind of thing. So if the first day they say, I don't want to talk to you, we totally appreciate that. You just got admitted to jail. We'll come back at another time. But if they're clear and consistent in their no, then we can't concede. We can't proceed with working with them. So it's consent-based. Some of the challenges we come up against in our work, and the officers express this, and you would hear about it, is what constitutes a Form 1 in correction. So if somebody is on the street corner naked, screaming and shouting profanities, you know what? The police are going to come and put you on a Form 1 and bring you to emerge. If somebody's screaming, shouting profanities in a jail cell, where are you going to go? Are they at danger of hurting themselves? Are they at danger of hurting others? So the bar gets a little higher and the containment of risk becomes different. And so unfortunately, we see people who, under the Mental Health Act, and that danger to self or others is really contained and mitigated just by the simple fact that they're in a cell. And emerge doctors and those working in the field will say, oh, we can't do anything different here. You know, we're not able to provide any extra for that. So sometimes people get sent out in a form and shipped back really quickly. They might get some short-term medical intervention or medications, but it's difficult to keep them under that Form 1. The other thing, of course, I flagged was that multiple admissions. So 10% of our inmate population that we work with in FICE have been admitted 4 times or more. And those, you know, the frequent flyers sort of thing, it is so difficult because housing and all those social determinants of health pieces are very hard to line up. And those ACT teams or sort of community treatment teams, they have wait lists. And so these guys often fall between the cracks and are cycling in and out of shelters and homelessness and back into jail. There's also the bed shortages across Ontario. And so who deserves a bed? That stigma piece. So a guy comes in through Emerge in a jumpsuit with 2 correctional officers shackled, leg irons, and they're hoping to get admitted to a mental health bed. Well, the whole Emerge now is probably a little bit, you know, nervous and uncomfortable and wondering what's happening. And unfortunately, the milieu of the hospital setting is often kind of like, oh, this guy needs to go back to jail and he doesn't belong here. And unfortunately, people who work in corrections know that stigma, and it's unfortunate that's still a hangover, sort of, so to speak, in terms of the general society's view of our guys. So there's the stigma. And also, of course, the limits of our program is that we're only available in 2 Ontario hospitals, right, and 2 Ontario jails right now. And across the system, there is a great demand and inquiry about why FICE hasn't been rolled out in other places. And that's something that we'd be more than happy to help coordinate. But of course, it's not in our hands to just expand our funding. But it is something that's definitely sought after, and there's been an expressed interest. So that's everything. Now I'm going to turn it over. If you have any questions for either myself or Sharie, we're definitely here. I'm going to see if I can put Sharie in on the screen as well.
Hey. So while you're doing that and oh, I see, there you both are. It's great.
We are here in the same room.
All right. So what I'm gonna do is I have some questions for both of you, and I'm going to, but I will monitor the Q&A, and if anything pops up there, I'll bring it to your attention. So the first question I have, Tanya, since you're closer, I'll start with you. That screening process, and you showed us the brief jail mental health screen, for example, and that can trigger, you know, the people who you've referred to either as clients or our guys to see FICE. What happens in other institutions that don't have a FICE? It's a 2-part question, really. One is there that kind of mental health screening assessment that even goes on at other institutions? And 2, if there is, what happens if there's something that would, at Toronto South, trigger a FICE referral?
Yeah, so in other institutions, Corrections Ontario did implement the brief jail screener across all institutions, and the JSAT is being done. Usually, I think the social workers or the nurses at other institutions are completing them. And of course, in an ideal world, that sounds okay, but in reality, the staffing model was never designed for that. So those frontline workers now, the social workers at Maplehurst, for example, or Toronto East, already have a long list of duties, and now they're being taxed with doing an extra set of work that's, you know, was never really designed in their program. And the JSAT, the brief jail screeners are being done, and they do trigger the JSAT, but they don't have the time or the luxury to have that specialized mental health care that FICE brings. So it is being followed, but to be quite frank, they don't have the resources to bring what we do. And it's not, what's interesting to note is that it's not that the Toronto South social workers or nurses aren't stellar and amazing, is that they have 1,200 or 1,560 if they were full other inmates to deal with. And as you know, in corrections, everybody needs a discharge plan. Everybody wants to have conversations with family. They need coordinated care. And they're trying to do the mental health specialty work off the side of their desk. And that's the piece that we bring. We bring the specialized care and the extra resources. And the electronic health record, quite frankly. Toronto South doesn't have an electronic health record, nor do they have access to the history we would by going into our medical records.
Okay, thank you for that. Now, in terms of the JSAT that you mentioned, I noticed up in the left-hand corner that comes from something called the BC Mental Health and Assessment. I didn't get the last word, but
Yeah.
I assume that BC stands for British Columbia, and which leads to the next question. Is there a FICE type of program in BC, or for that matter, in other provinces in Canada?
I'm not sure what's rolled out recently across Canada, but I know in British Columbia that the tool that we're using, developed by Tanya Nichols and a group, was meant to do triage right down in the A&D admissions. So they actually do a JSAT and have specialized workers that do the JSAT in admissions and use it as a triage tool for placement on units. So it's not being used in the same spirit of the way they used it in BC. BC, they have workers that are saying, okay, this person has this mental health issue. He goes on this range based on the JSAT. And for us, we use it afterwards, after they've been placed on a range. I'm not aware of any other FICE services right now across Canada, but I know there's definitely an increased interest in having more mental health integrated into corrections. So that's been something they've looked at across BC, I believe, and trying to contract out and integrate more health into the correctional setting. I think one of the things that makes it very unique, and we learned from day one, we have very different mandates, right? So the Ministry of the Solicitor General is all about security, protecting people, protecting the community, risk assessment, which is what you want your officers and your jails to do. Ours, of course, is healthcare, which is treatment, care, rehabilitation. So we have very different mandates coming together, very, very different models. And the overlap is the place where we can work together. And so why not have specialist services partner like that?
Okay. And here's I guess, a typical criminal defense lawyer kind of question. Because you mentioned that you do work with people who are either have fitness to stand trial issues or not criminally responsible, or NCR issues. And so my question is this: what, is there any warning given to those clients about, look, I have to tell you before we start talking about what happened or what's going on, that, there's no privilege here. I could be subpoenaed by the Crown, because when I've run NCR defenses, that's what I get. Oh, they're asking to see me at the jail. There's a jail doctor or a jail social worker. Should I even be talking to them at all? And how do you deal with those kind of issues?
So first, we're, again, as you mentioned, we're a consent-based service. So we don't speak to people unless they give us written and express consent. And we don't speak to the lawyers unless, of course, we get consent. The other piece is we're not interested in their trial. We don't have any weight in our team. Our team is not looking at fitness or measuring fitness. We're trying to look at mental health care and level of functioning, ability to work with us. So if a client wants to talk about their case, first of all, we do a general, consent speech about how we work and who we share information with, which by default automatically is the South. We have to share information with them. So we explain that. And then we tell them, we don't want to know about your court issue. We don't want to know guilty, innocent, what your plea is, what you're doing. We want to talk about that. We're here to talk about your health and wellness. And we really try to make a firm line about that. We don't want to talk about, did you do it? If you didn't do it, what you did. And our clinicians are really trained to sort of stay out of that. That's why, from a healthcare perspective, I talk about it as we're dealing with acutely unwell clients who by the legal system might be called unfit, right? So we walk a fine line with that. We haven't had, I think once we've had a clinician subpoenaed, but at the end of the day, the information you would get is coming through the CAMH health record, and you can just request their notes. Our notes are all on CAMH at the CAMH health records.
Okay, all right, thank you. Now, I wonder if you and Tanya, you and Sharie can just switch places, and I'll direct some questions to Sharie.
Sure.
Okay, so Sharie, you'd mentioned, of course, what happens at the South, and some of the what I assume are unique features of the South, and starting with the admissions process and the screening, and we talked I talked a little bit about this with Tanya. So, what is the training of the people before they get to a place like FICE, before you see them, someone screening them right at the get-go? And I assume those are correctional officers, maybe I'm wrong, but who's doing that? And you're shaking your head no. So who is doing that, and what kind of training do they have to look for things?
So the individuals who are in our A&D, they're registered nurses. So they're nursing practitioners, and they're also then, if a client discloses mental health concerns currently, or if they have a history of mental health concerns, they're then further seen by a mental health registered nurse who addresses those concerns. And then they play their part in having the client classified. So what Tanya may have mentioned in other institutions where the JSAT is that precursor for classification, the mental health team or the mental health nurse will then, depending on what the client discloses, classify that client to a special needs unit where we house clients with mental health concerns.
Okay, so here we've got 4 minutes left, and so I'm going to ask you this next question, which may be the most difficult one, and may take up the remainder of the time, maybe not. So I'm sure you're aware that in February of 2017, Toronto Life magazine published an article in which they referred to the South as the $1 billion hellhole, and described it that, notwithstanding the best intentions, a lot of which you've told us about, it was a, quote, house of horrors, end quote. So first of all, I want to ask you if, how accurate that kind of thing was at the time, whether it's still the case, because nothing you've said suggests that it's anything like that, or if there's any changes since 2017 that have occurred at the South.
Well, unfortunately, I can't speak to that article. I can speak to what we do here presently and how we try to address the concerns. Toronto South is trying to be a modern center, a place for rehabilitation and reintegration of our clients. And we try our best to hear the needs of our clients, hear the needs of our staff, and address those. So for instance, we have addiction counselors. Addiction counselors were only at Central East Detention Center, and I want to say Hamilton Wentworth. And now the province has heard the cry of our clients, and as well as our social workers who will be helping these clients. And now we have 57 addiction counselors throughout the province. So while I can't speak to the negative article, I can speak to the work that we are doing here, the collaborative effort that we are putting in place, not only with our multidisciplinary team, but with consent, speaking to lawyers, speaking to our community agencies, and addressing those needs. While we are a detention center, we're unable to delve deep into someone's trauma, but our psychology team addresses acute concerns. So every member of our team, if it's a correctional officer, if it's a chaplain, we play our part. So unfortunately, I wouldn't consider a hellhole. We do our best to address our clients' needs and address the needs of the community, to have people who re-enter society address their concerns that may have led them to be here in the first place.
Okay, I think one of the concerns that was there was that the design of the place, which you talked about, lend itself to safety concerns. Having corrections officers in the same space as inmates and all that sort of thing. Yeah. Is that an ongoing problem, or is it not, or?
So our model is simply to have that idea of reintegration. Corrections is going through a sense of modernity. Historically, corrections was seen as a place of punitive action, but now we're moving towards addressing mental health needs. As Tanya mentioned in her slide, we see the number of clients who have healthcare concerns. So while we're not justifying the actions that they have been charged with, we are trying to address the concerns that may have led to negative behavior. So the setup of the unit, while in other detention centers or other institutions, people are very familiar with a behind the bars system, the setup having that almost open concept allows people a sense of normalcy. It breaks down the barriers between our staff and our clients and breaks down that fear and hate. So I would say that having a direct supervision model actually increases a person's sense of normalcy, but also an understanding that while they're housed here, there is help. While they're housed here, each staff member will play a part to model the behavior that they too may want to follow.
Okay, thanks. Sorry.
Sorry, can you hear me, Lauren? If I can just add quickly to that, one piece I wanted to say that COVID has demonstrated about the Toronto South is that the design, the layout of the physical plant has been a blessing, because we've been able to contain and support other institutions with outbreaks. So because it's so big, because there's a sense of being able to have units closed or open and inmates separated, it's actually helped stop the spread of COVID, and other facilities are using this as an overflow space to help contain COVID. So it is a different model. It's a relational security model. It is a switch from what people thought of in the past, but I've seen, being here now several years, that it does work. And when properly, staffed and implemented, it makes a huge difference. And like I said, the COVID piece for sure really demonstrated how efficient it could be.
Okay, great. Thanks very much for that. I see that Dennis's camera is back on, which probably means we're getting the big hook right about now.
I just want to take the time to thank our presenters very much for a very interesting presentation. Attorney Sabsay, thank you very much for moderating this session. We are now going to a luncheon break. So we'll see everyone back at 1 o'clock.